Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now, let's start with the first story. It's called 24/7. I worked at a major consumer products manufacturer as a maintenance electrician. We handled electrical repairs and troubleshooting for the whole factory. The front-end department started having production problems, and the plant manager was not happy. Now, the front end was very dirty and noisy, so we as electricians didn't want to spend a lot of time there. But we took our responsibility seriously and worked quickly to address electrical problems. Well, the front-end supervisors decided that the electricians were the problem and requested an electrician be stationed there 24/7, when the real problem was the lack of mechanical maintenance on the machines and poor repairs by the mechanics. Our boss was absolutely no help, and he agreed with the request. We decided to embrace the assignment with a twist. Since we were required to spend our 12-hour shift on the front end, we started a log. We documented every mechanical problem on every machine and brought that log to every production meeting. Pretty soon, the production supervisors were getting called on the carpet about the mechanical problems, and then they decided that they didn't need the electricians stationed in the front end. The next story is called Permit Shenanigans. We were prohibited from renovating two historic, but very primitive and neglected 1890 cottages on our lakeside lot. A complete renovation of two homes on one lot required a zoning septic variance, which the town refused. The town really didn't want us to make any exterior renovations, and we wanted to join the two houses by installing bathrooms between them, making one house from two. The board said they were not prohibiting the renovations. We were just limited to renovating no more than 20% of each home each year, as limited by town law, requiring 10 years to complete. Insane. Our attorney pointed out that no variance was required if we tore down the two old houses and built just one new house, regardless of size, if we stayed within the footprint of the original buildings. Neither of the permits to demolish and build new required town board approval. The town compliance officer had no choice but to grant both permits, much to the annoyance of the town board, which wanted the historic buildings to stay. To top it off, by forcing us to build a new home used 12 months of the year, the town was forced to improve the town-owned road so that it could be plowed in winter. The third story is called Planning Permission. I live in the UK, and a family member, Steve, lives in Canada. Around 10 years ago, I flew over to see my Canadian family, and whilst I was there, was surprised to see that Steve was living in an RV with his wife. When I'd previously visited, he had been living in a 3-story house, basement, ground and first floor. On this occasion, his house appeared to be on stilts. The entire thing had been raised up by around 2.5 meters, whilst the ground underneath had been excavated, leaving nothing more than a big hole in the ground. I could not ask why his house was hovering precariously above ground, on nothing more than a dozen metal supports. It emerges that he had sought planning permission to add an extra floor to his house. Despite literally living miles away from the nearest neighbor, this permission was rejected. He was however informed that should he wish to expand his house, he could install a basement and didn't require planning permission. Being the extremely handy and resourceful fella that he is, he had the bright idea to jack the property up and install a new basement below the existing basement. In essence, the old basement now became the ground floor. I visited 5 years later and the work was completed. I asked him if he had ever had any issues from the planning department. He told me that they sent someone out, but given that there was nothing in the rules preventing a house being raised by a floor through being jacked up and built under, no action was taken. The next story is called Without Blood. I work in a grocery store deli, so I get all kinds of people not understanding the basics about the food they put in their bodies. One particular day though, I had a customer come in and ask for roast beef. While there was an open shop, what we call the hunks of meat, destined for slicing, it was close to its sell-by date and looked visibly dry. I decided I wanted to go above and beyond for the customer and open up a new chop. I was going to slice up the old chop later, for pre-sliced meats or for sandwiches. Upon pulling out the new chop, the customer incredulously says, "Don't you have anything without blood in it?" Ignoring the fact that the reddish liquid you see from meat is not blood. That juice is where most of your flavor and moisture is going to come from. After a couple of attempts to explain this to the customer, I just gave up and went to cut up the old chop for them. I would of course later be told that I had received a complaint for giving a customer dry meat. It's a petty compliance and nothing really came of it, but I like to think that I made at least one person think briefly about what they were putting in their body, and that maybe us lowly workers might actually know something about the products we sell. The last story is called No PTO. It's been a decade since this happened. I worked at a daycare in my early 20s. This was a small, independently owned center, not one of the big companies, so there's no one above the big boss. I hated this job. I was so miserable being in that toxic environment. The boss would sit in her office and just watch the classrooms from the cameras in the rooms. Now that is standard practice. Every other place I had been to offered a live feed to the parents, but not this lady. She was the only one allowed to watch the footage. Her favorite thing to do was watch the footage live, find a reason to call you into her office so she could write up. I got written up for a kid who bit another kid. I was in trouble, because even though I wasn't in the room, I should have corrected that. The time off setup was awful. If I remember correctly, you couldn't request time off, unless you had been there for a year. They didn't offer PTO either. My now husband surprised me with a week-long trip to Colorado. I had to go. I needed a vacation. Plus I was poor. And it was a free trip. Because of the policy, I knew they were not going to let me take off for that. So I lied and said I had to go to Colorado for my aunt's funeral. They legally had to let me take off, but said that I had to bring proof when I got back. I was scared, because I wasn't expecting that. I asked what kind of proof. She listed a few things, and the funeral program was one of them. My boyfriend's father had passed the year before, and he was put in charge of making the programs. So we came up with a plan. My boyfriend and I got nicer paper and made a program for my Aunt Betty. We needed pictures of her, so I went on Facebook and tried to find someone who matched any description I had given people. After many clicks down the rabbit hole, I found a nice sweet elderly lady and saved some of her pictures. I was very young. This was also before people catfishing on dating apps was a thing, so I really thought it was a victimless crime. We made a very convincing program that included her favorite Bible verse and a favorite poem. Multiple images showed how vibrant my aunt's life was. The topper was to make sure it looked like it was stuffed in a bag. No one ever found out. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.